As we start discussing amphibians, our main focus is going to be how we actually define an amphibian and also looking at the evolution of amphibians. So as we first start, remember from last week, we wrote down the learning targets and we said the class name is Amphibia. The word amphibia actually means double life. So this refers to the fact that amphibians spend part of their life in water and part of their life on land. This is the smallest group of vertebrates. So many of these populations are heavily affected by pollution and climate change. And so we're going to talk about reasons why that's the case. This is containing only about 4,000 different species, and a lot of them are on the endangered species list. So smallest group of vertebrates that we have. They can range anywhere in size from teeny tiny tree frogs that would fit on the tip of your finger to giant salamanders that can be up to 170 centimeters long. So when it says enormous salamanders, that's relative to the size of a salamander, not like a salamander that's as big as an elephant. When we're looking at the body plan, we're going to talk and refresh your memory about complete metamorphosis as we go through this. And so looking at that complete metamorphosis, we're looking at how they start off as a larval stage that has gills and lives in water and completely transforms into terrestrial animals that breathe with lungs. And so we're going to look at that transition between the two. We talked about two orders listed on your learning targets. The first one is order Anura. This includes all species of frogs and toads. And then looking at order Caudata, which includes all species of salamanders and newts. When we're looking at the body plan, main differences we see between just those two groups by looking at them is that frogs and toads in their adult life do not have a tail, whereas the salamanders do. And so when we talked about the fish, we mentioned specifically the coelacanth, which is the only living member of the lobe-finned fish. And so looking at fossil evidence, scientists think that that lobe-finned fish is the vertebrate ancestor of amphibians. So remember, that doesn't mean amphibians evolved from the lobe-finned fish. It just means that they share similar common ancestry. Okay. When we're looking at the fact that they're returning to water to breed, this is a major difference that will compare to the reptiles as we move forward. Their eggs do not have a protective shell. And the fact that they hatch into these aquatic larvae, it also makes logical sense that they're going to lay their eggs in those aquatic habitats. These are examples from all three groups. We don't focus on the legless amphibians just because there's only a few of them. But if you look up here, this red-eyed tree frog would be in order Anura. This is the redback salamander that would be in order Caudata. And then the legless amphibians belong to a group called order Caecilia. These are known as the Caecilians or the legless amphibians. So if we're looking at, like I said, that word amphibian, it literally means double life. So the larvae look like tiny fish. They breathe through gills, and then compare that once they go through metamorphosis. And we'll look at the life cycle of a typical amphibian later on this week. But the adults have this complete shift in their body plan, where they were once breathing with gills and living in water, and their body was adapted completely to the water. Now they're emerging out of the water onto land, using lungs to breathe, and also developing legs rather than having that fish-like tail. Reasons why they're closely tied to water, I mentioned previously. So their eggs do not have a protective shell. If they were laid on land, they're going to run the risk of drying out. And so they're laid in water. Also, it's not going to do any good for them to lay their eggs on land, because even if they didn't dry out, when that egg would hatch, that tadpole, because it has gills, is not going to be able to survive in a terrestrial environment. Based on what we comparatively talked about for the fish, there's no protective scales or anything like that on their skin. This is one of the main reasons that they're so susceptible to pollution, because not only is the skin of an amphibian very thin, oftentimes it's used as a respiratory structure as well. And so just like we talked about for the annelids, this respiratory surface has to stay moist in order for that gas exchange to completely occur. So even though they do have lungs, they're still relying a lot on that skin as a respiratory surface. So let's look at our actual definition here and break down our distinguishing characteristics. It says amphibians can be defined as vertebrates, So we know that means they have a backbone. They're aquatic as larvae, terrestrial as adults, so they differ in terms of their environment. They breathe with lungs as adults. They have a moist skin that contains many glands. So those glands will actually help to secrete a mucousy or slimy coating. They do not have scales like the fish, and they do not have claws. So we mentioned the claws because that's something that we'll see in the reptiles as we move ahead. Here it's showing you two different viewpoints of that amphibian life cycle. So when you look at this tadpole here, you can actually see this one is in the process of metamorphosis. You can see the start of the formation of those hind legs here. This tail will continue to shrink up as it goes through metamorphosis. And then here's the adult form. When we're looking at the evolution of the amphibians, and there's an image in your notes as well, when we're looking at the fossil record, remember that there are huge gaps in that fossil record. But the estimation is that amphibians appeared in the fossil record about 360 million years ago. And they share that close relationship with the lobe-finned fish, with the coelacanth. So if you are comparing this to life in water, think about if you've ever been in water and you were holding a weight, like whether you were working out or if you've ever like babysat and you were holding like a toddler or something like that in the water, you notice that the buoyancy is much different. If you're holding that toddler on land, they feel much heavier compared to if you're holding them in the water. And so that transition from a life completely in water to one that's on land, there had to be many adaptations that occurred in the typical amphibian body plan. One of those is that the bones had to become stronger. So by doing so, that's going to help support the weight and that pull of gravity. This is also why, if you know any elderly individuals that need like physical therapy or things like that, this is why a lot of times they do that in water. Notice that with the shark dissection, we didn't see a rib cage or anything like that. So now we have this protective rib cage in the terrestrial vertebrates that's going to help to protect the internal organs. We also mentioned how fish did not have a good sense of hearing. They're relying heavily on vibrations. And so now we're going to talk about a structure called a tympanic membrane. This is essentially an eardrum. And so looking at that lateral line system and the series of pores that we saw on the fish, now there's that tympanic membrane, which is going to be really important for reproduction. Because in order to be able to breed, the females have to be able to hear the call of the male, because that's what they're mainly attracted to. Mucus glands, like I said, for keeping the skin moist. Eyelids, we said how fish do not have eyelids, and so now in order to keep the eye moist, they're going to blink that eyelid to replenish moisture. Anything that's going to help those sense organs and keep them from drying out when they're in that adult form on land. So normally we can see that as one animal group dies out, it leaves space for another one to be able to thrive. And so if we're looking at the complex evolution of amphibians, we see that they had completely come onto land with limited populations of other organisms. They had a lot of food, very little competition. The issue became when shifts in climate started to happen. Because amphibians rely so heavily on water to breed, a lot of those swampy aquatic environments started to dry up. And so a lot of the amphibian groups became extinct about 245 million years ago. So like I said, we're limited to those populations that are currently found on Earth. And again, because of shifts in climate that we're experiencing now and pollution tied into that, it's just a dramatic shift in those population numbers. So a lot of these, like I mentioned, are going to be found on the endangered species list. And we're going to talk about, some conservation efforts that have been put into place to try and help these populations.